Hello, my name is Stephanie Peddle. I'm an independent contractor with Pangea. I specialize in behavioral sciences, including clinical interventions, social, emotional, and behavioral programming, and skill enhancement. You can see my profile on the Pangea website. Part of my role is to create and present professional learning modules. So, this is part of a series of modules, each one building on the previous, and can function as a resource or reference further along. If there's anything you'd like to learn more about, please let me know in the comments or in the feedback form at the end, depending on which format you're accessing this from. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to turn on closed captioning now. At Pangea, we honor, recognize, and respect Indigenous peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live. In our efforts towards reconciliation, we continue to build and strengthen relationships with First Nations, as well as the large Métis community and growing Inuit communities here in Durham. We commit to learning from Indigenous values and knowledge, building opportunities for collaboration, and recognizing that we are all connected. So, welcome to the module on data collection. I want to start by talking about our own learning. Everyone comes here with varying levels of prior knowledge and experience. The foundation of all learning is remembering. To be able to remember, recognize, and recall facts. Will you be able to remember this information and relay it to someone else? Next is understanding. To be able to understand and demonstrate what those facts mean. And third is applying. To be able to apply the facts, rules, concepts, and ideas to actual situations. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, I will discuss what data is, and specifically behavioral data. I will discuss the importance of collecting data and the value it brings. I will break down the components of behavioral data. I will discuss how patterns determine the behavioral function or functions. And I will introduce you to the 4 functions of behavior. So let's dive in. What is data? What does data mean? Data is factual information used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, decision-making, calculation, and publishing. Data is collected, processed, and analyzed in virtually every field and industry. In our field, behavioral data informs our reasoning, discussions, and decision-making for programming. The facts in behavioral data are the who, what, when, where, and how, which then leads us to the why behind the behavior. The why is the function. So what is data? Data can be graphs, information, quantities, numbers, facts, observations, and measurement. Behavioral data asks, who did the event occur with or to? Who was involved or engaging with the client? How many times did it occur and for how long? How often? What did it look like? What did it sound like? Where and when did it occur? What was the intensity of an event? And finally, what is the client trying to communicate? This will give us a full picture of an event or occurrence. So why do we want to collect data? Data collection is an essential first step of behavior assessment. It guides us in making informed and accurate decisions to ensure clients are receiving the most effective programming possible. And data collection is an evidence-informed practice rooted in decades of research. We want to collect enough data to establish a baseline. A baseline gives us a jumping off point for programming. We want to collect enough data to identify patterns in antecedents and consequences. Patterns can exist in time of day, type of demand, specific transitions, environment, location, and even people. And we want to collect enough data to identify the function of the behavior. The function, again, is the why behind that specific behavior. Data can also be used to evaluate the effectiveness of interventions, and therefore, the absence of data risks the continuation of a potentially ineffective intervention or program. Now let's look at the components of behavioral data. The first component is the behavior itself. In understanding the ABCs of behavior, start by defining the behavior. Many terms have been used, such as challenge behavior, undesirable behavior, target behavior, or problem behavior. But the priority should be to focus on actions that pose a safety risk or impact a client's dignity or quality of life. The definition should be so clear that anyone can collect the data. If someone can read it and act it out, it's a clear definition. The target behavior should be an action that can be seen or heard, and the target behavior should be measurable. An action that can be counted or timed. Now let's look at some examples. We want to avoid vague or nondescript wording, such as tantrum, trashing the room, physical aggression, verbal aggression, or self-injury. These can lead to misinterpretation and inaccurate data. Instead, we want to focus on clear, observable actions, such as crying, dropping to the floor, throwing objects. Are those objects directed or not directed at someone? A hit, a punch, a kick, a spit. Swearing or name-calling, biting themselves, hitting their head on a surface, hitting themselves with their hand. Very clear behavior. The next components are ones we have more control over, or at least can be able to influence. So antecedents, these are what happens right before the behavior, such as a prompt, demand, or something that triggers a behavior. And then consequences, what happens right after the behavior, such as a response or the outcome for the client. Again, these are strictly what happens directly before and what happens directly after a behavior, escalation, or event. And finally, setting events. These are prior events or conditions that happen hours or even days before the behavior, such as lack of sleep, change in routine, a missed medication, or an argument with someone. Setting events are sometimes not known to us. We sometimes have to ask or speculate and give the benefit of the doubt. Knowing the client, their circumstances, and their baseline helps us with this. The final component is context. These are things we generally have less control over. However, they should be recorded, as there can be patterns in these as well. These answer the where and when, usually. Some examples are the date, time, location, or people present or engaging with the client. Some examples of antecedents are a prompt or demand, a transition, a change in routine or schedule, an end of a preferred activity, environmental stimulus such as temperature or volume, difficulty communicating wants or needs, and being denied access to something, usually something preferred. And some examples of consequences are a verbal or visual redirections, sometimes to a schedule, task, or choice board. Reduced expectation, a reprimand, ignored or given space, or a distraction. And then as programming develops, the consequence options should be updated in our data collection to promote consistency in responses and to track effectiveness. We will look at data collection methods in a moment. As we collect this data, we use the information to identify patterns in antecedents and consequences, and then to determine the function of the target behavior. Using the acronym SEAT, the sensory function is when a client engages in a behavior in order to gain or avoid some sensory input, such as a smell, noise, touch, or taste. Escape is to escape or avoid something non-preferred, such as a task or demand. Attention is to gain attention, positive or negative, from an adult or peer. And tangible is to gain access to a preferred item, such as tech, toys, or food. Remember, all behavior is communication. What is the individual trying to communicate with their behavior? When we determine the function, we then select strategies that match the function. A successful program should include a combination of antecedent or prevention strategies, teaching or skill building strategies, and consequence or response strategies. Now let's look at some examples of data collection methods. So Google Forms is very streamlined, user-friendly, and automatically graphs the data, and it's free. The questions can be customized to an individual client, and most of the questions can be just a checkbox or a drop-down, making it very quick and easy. And here are some examples of the graphs that Google Forms will automatically generate. Because the questions can be customized, this becomes extremely accurate and beneficial for program development. However, paper and pencil methods are still relevant. They're fast and can be input into Google Forms afterwards. Using checkboxes that match the Google Forms makes it quick and easy to transfer over. And here are some essential next steps. These will be future modules. We'll dive deeper into the 4 functions. For an intervention to be successful, the strategies must match the function. Then we'll go over some function-based interventions. That leads us into our replacement behavior and skill building. So when choosing a behavior to target, you must ask, is it realistic? Is it attainable? And will it benefit the client in terms of their dignity and quality of life? And finally, we'll cover an introduction to reinforcement. This is an important part of a program and must be meaningful and motivating to the client. Also, Pangea offers some helpful learning resources on their website. From the homepage, click the Training and Workshops tab. Thank you for joining me. Please click the Pangea logo and fill out a short feedback form. This will benefit the creation of future modules. I hope this learning experience met your expectations and that you will be able to remember, understand, and apply your knowledge.